In this video, we're going to feature my grandmother's Puerto Rican pink beans and rice recipe. Rice and beans is a very common staple for preppers for their long-term food storage. Oftentimes we store them in Mylar bags with the oxygen removed so they can be stored for decades on end. The only problem with rice and beans is that they're fairly bland. My grandma, who we called Mama or Mama Rosa, used to make the most delicious Puerto Rican cuisines, including rice and beans. It's not widely known, but I'm half Puerto Rican. My father and his family came from Mayaguez, Puerto Rico when my father was a child. I get my height from my mom's side of the family, who were Swedish and German. But I spent a few years learning Mama's recipes from her before she passed away several years ago. So this is her recipe for Puerto Rican pink beans and rice that has a ton of great flavors. In this video, I'm only going to be using the items that are found in a pantry, so they're non-perishable. Her recipe calls for fresh pork, fresh sofrito, fresh potatoes, so I'm going to have to substitute those ingredients with canned alternatives, since this is an emergency preparedness channel after all. There are many variations to this recipe with minor tweaks based on family preference. Everyone is going to say that their mama's recipe was the best. That's just part of the culture. Mama was notorious for leaving out certain ingredients when she taught me her recipes because she didn't want my versions to be as good as hers. I eventually caught her sneaking in certain ingredients when she thought I wasn't looking. This is also part of the Puerto Rican culture. I know many moms and grandmas that won't tell anyone their recipe for sofrito or certain dishes. It may appear in their will or as their final words to their descendants before passing away. FYI, I'm not going to pronounce everything correctly in this video like rolling my R's. For some reason, my family didn't want to teach us the language when we were young. So without further ado, let's get started with this video featuring Mama's Puerto Rican pink beans and rice recipe. Let's get started. Let's start off by going to your neighborhood Hispanic grocery store and pick up the following items for your pantry. We're going to need a 32 ounce of the Goya pink beans, an 8 ounce can of tomato sauce. We're going to need a jar of olives, a jar of sofrito, a jar of minced garlic, 1 packet of sazon, capers, adobo seasoning. As a pork replacement, we're going to use Vienna sausages, 2 cups of rice, some corn oil. You could also use olive oil, but my grandma used corn oil. And we're going to need a small potato. Normally we'd use a fresh potato, but since this is with items all out of the pantry, we're going to use the canned potato instead. You could pick up many of these items at non-Hispanic grocery stores like Trader Joe's. However, the pink beans, adobo, sazon, and sofrito will be the main ingredients that you'll find very hard to find at alternative stores. Mama always preferred using Goya food products for her cooking for decades, so that's what I use for her Puerto Rican recipes. Let's start going through the cooking instructions for the pink beans now. So we're going to dice up the meat and cook it on medium-high heat with corn oil. Again, pork is preferred. If you don't have pork, dice up a single strip of bacon. If you don't have bacon, Mama used to use 4 Vienna sausages. If you don't like canned meat, you could also use a chicken-flavored bouillon cube. Otherwise, just skip this step to make it 100% vegetarian. Again, Mama preferred using fresh pork, but for this video, I'm going to be using the Vienna sausages, which she would sometimes use when money was a little tight. As that pork is cooking, we're going to add 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. So you could grow your own garlic, but for this video, again, we're using all pantry items. So I'm using the minced garlic that you could buy by the jar. Next, add 1 teaspoon of sofrito. Sofrito is a mandatory ingredient for almost all Puerto Rican cuisine. Every family has their own sofrito recipe, and most of the time they don't want to share it with anyone. When I make sofrito, I store it in ice cube trays so then I could use them as needed when cooking. But Goya makes a good sofrito that's jarred, which you can keep in your pantry. Next, empty the entire can of pink beans. Some people prefer to wash the pink beans, but Mama just dumped it in with the juices and all. Next, add the 8 ounce can of tomato sauce. Start stirring everything together. Next, you want to add around 6 olives with a little bit of olive juice. Next, add a single teaspoon of capers, again with a little bit of the juice. Add 1 packet of sazon. This was one of the ingredients that Mama used to sneak in when I wasn't looking. But you basically want to use this with almost all Puerto Rican dishes. It'll give it a nice flavor and coloring. Next, add a dash of the adobo seasoning. This was another one of those ingredients that Mama used to like sneaking in when I wasn't looking, but I eventually figured it out. Start stirring everything together. Last, we're going to add 1 small potato cut into small cubes. Normally, you would use a fresh potato that you get from the grocery store or better yet from your home garden, but from your pantry, you could use a canned potato. Chop it up into small cubes, and then I usually wash these. So stir everything together and bring it to a boil. Once it reaches a boil, put it on simmer and let it cook for a while you prepare the rice. Here's how Mama prepared her white rice. I actually got to inherit Mama's old rice cooking pot, which has probably had thousands of bowls of rice and various other Puerto Rican dishes cooked in it. I was really honored to receive this. So we're going to use 2 cups of rice and be sure to rinse it beforehand. Mama preferred using the medium grain rice, but we typically have basmati rice for our long-term food storage, so that's what I'm going to use. Add a single teaspoon of salt. So as normal, we're going to bring it up to a boil. So like with all rice, you're going to have 2 parts water to 1 part rice. So for this one, we're using 4 cups of water. We're going to bring it up to a boil and we're going to cook it slightly longer than we normally would. You don't want the rice to be too sticky. Once it's beginning to look a little bit like oatmeal, add a few tablespoons of corn oil, stir it in, and then turn it down to low and let it sit for 12 minutes. After that, you're basically done. So serve the seasoned pink beans on top or alongside the rice and enjoy. Did I mention that Mama wasn't known for cooking the healthiest food in the world? Anytime that I mentioned corn oil, you could really replace that with olive oil or whatever your preferred cooking oil is. I'm just providing the recipe exactly how she used to prepare it. And that's going to do it for this video featuring Mama's Puerto Rican pink beans and rice recipe. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching it. Pink beans is the way to go. Mama never used pinto beans, which is a common bean that a lot of us preppers store in our emergency preps. But theoretically, you could use this same recipe with the pinto beans that you probably have in your Mylar bags for your long-term food storage. But if you could find it at your Hispanic grocery store, I would definitely pick up several cans of the pink beans. You're really going to like it. Again, all of the ingredients that we used in this particular video are things that you could store in your pantry for multiple years. Most of the items have a very long shelf life. So I think that you could prepare this dish during an emergency situation when you had to rely solely on your pantry preps. I'm very confident that if you prepare this recipe correctly, it's going to be your favorite way of eating beans and rice. Special shout out to Mama Rosa for teaching me how to make this. She might be a little disappointed that I shared her recipe outside of the family, but it is for a good cause. So make sure you add some flavor to your rice and beans and do it Puerto Rican style. You're absolutely going to love it. Leave your comments below in the comment section and stay tuned for more videos. See you next time.